Hi, welcome to Exploring Possibilities. I'm your host, Cheryl Sitz. You know, I love to facilitate personal awakening and transformation. I do it in my coaching work, as a holistic practitioner, in my events, and since 2012 on this show as well. You can listen to Exploring Possibilities on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Play, where you can subscribe and rate us too so others will find us. You'll also find our shows and a lot of other goodies at journeyofpossibilities.com. We'll continue with today's show in just a moment.
Have you ever gone to a social media seminar and you have the online experts telling you, get a blog, get a website, get on social media, all this other stuff? By the time you're done with that seminar, that online expert is very good at frying your brain. And the funny part is, you come back home, you get in front of the computer, and you're lost. Hi, I am Mario with Tech Life Balance. I see this all the time. You spend so much money and still don't know what is going on with your online presence. And you know, you probably don't need all of that. Let me go ahead and translate Geek to English for you and show you what you really need, because you don't need it all. You probably only need a few components. You have a great message out there, and I would like to hear it, and I definitely want to help you put it out there. I am Mario Rosales with TechLifeBalance.net. I produce this podcast because I love distributing messages. Let me help you distribute your message.
Who are you? Why are you here? What wonders and opportunities await you beyond physical death? What happened millennia ago to create the damaged earth and fractured societies you see around you? Empowering, enlightening, internationally acclaimed, the Joseph Communications books offer answers to these questions. Spiritual, concise, contemporary, non-denominational, the communications originate from Joseph, a highly evolved discarnate spirit concerned for you and the future of the planet and its peoples. The words of Joseph and his soul group give you the power to bring light and change into your own life and the lives of others, and to restore the earth. Available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook formats, the communications can be ordered today at www.thejosephcommunications.com, and also from Amazon and other major booksellers. All proceeds are used for further publishing and advertising, and to make the communications available worldwide.
Well, I want to take a moment to say thank you so much for enjoying our show each week on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or journeyofpossibilities.com. I really appreciate you listening, and I'd love to hear from you. If there's something you'd like to hear more about on the show, or just how you feel about it or anything, please feel free to drop me a line. I really want to make sure that this show is serving you in all the ways that it can. I'd also like to expand our relationship beyond just the show, so please come to our website, journeyofpossibilities.com, and share your email address with me. I keep those confidential. Nobody could pay me enough to sell them, and I value and respect your time, so I would never send you more than the one email a month. That's always been my promise. So sign up at journeyofpossibilities.com. Right on the homepage, you'll see Sign Me Up. That way I can let you know about some of the cool events and stuff we've got coming up, and hopefully you can join us and we can deepen our connection. I met today's guest through a former guest on the show, Omkari Williams. She and I were talking about collaborating, and she said, I've got somebody you've just got to meet. Julie Archambault has been a holistic teacher and educator for over 10 years and has been involved in healing for the greater part of her life, and I can really relate to that. After deep diving into the question of sex and how it's showing up in the world, she's written a soon-to-be-published book, 50 Shades of Connection, From Violently Disconnected to Blissfully Connected Sex. The book recounts many healing journeys with sex across the spectrum, and currently she helps individuals and groups heal their sexual energy at cocreativesex.com. Welcome, Julie.
Hello.
Thank you.
Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me on your show.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. It's been so fun getting to know you through Omkari, and I'm excited about the work that we're putting together. And I felt a real strong connection to you as soon as I started to explore your website. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came into deciding that you wanted to work with sexual healing in particular and the holistic path more generally?
Mm-hmm. Well, there was just this constant theme in my life where I kept on feeling that sex somehow just felt like this big fat knot in my life. And it just seemed to be showing up over and over again. So it was very interesting because when I was a teenager, I would have these boyfriends proposition me or boys proposition me, and I always felt like I had to guard myself, and I had to really keep them at bay because it was dangerous. And then, interestingly enough, when I actually met someone that I really loved, even if I really wanted to have sex with them, I was constantly having yeast infections and really not feeling good about what was happening. And I was still very completely in love with him. And so as time was going by and just seeing how in different my relationships, how it was, always a bit of a complex issue for me, there came a time I realized I really have to tackle this subject and really figure out what's going on with this. And it was interesting because it started with myself, but I quickly understood that I'm also being a very highly sensitive person, that I was reacting a lot to a lot of things going on in society. So I had to even go out and ask people their own stories and collect their stories and figure out what's actually going on out there too.
Yeah.
So that pretty much sums it up.
Wow. Well, and there's so much baggage around sex and sexuality. There's religious baggage. There's all kinds of baggage, cultural baggage coming out of the patriarchy and more of the feminine energy rising. More of that's coming out as well. Did you have any idea what you were in for?
Well, it's interesting because just recently I made this presentation, and the thing that really, the image that came for me or sort of came forward to express how deep and how much of a conflicted thing it is it's really a Pandora's box, So, when you open it, there's so much there, but it's such a fascinating journey because it's actually a real path that's going to lead you to understand yourself, all the things that you're carrying. And it really helps understand what's going on out there in the world, like all the whole Me Too issues, the people that are doing things that are hurting other people. You start understanding how everything connects. And that's really fascinating to understand.
Yes, it is. And it really is all bubbling up right now. People are speaking that have never spoken before. And so my story, for most of the people that have listened to the show, have some awareness of this, but my story has been more around inappropriate touch growing up. I grew up in a really religious environment, so there was a lot of guilt and shame around sexuality and sexual urges anyway. And then at the same time, there was this, being inappropriately touched and fondled and messed with by both of my grandfathers when I was a little girl. So I had like this duality of, I'm a sexual being, I'm their toy, but we can't talk about that because religion says, we should even suppress those urges. So I really was messed up about my own desires in ways that go beyond the mainstream. And I thought that was just me. And then the more I met people, it seems like everybody's got some kind of a story, right? I don't meet people that say, I'm really healthy sexually. I just don't ever hear that.
Yeah, exactly. And the interesting thing too, is when I was digging into my own story, because I had, of course, like most women have had some form of, misguided touch,
Mm-hmm.
but I still felt like there was something beyond what I was actually seeing in my own personal life. And I got this download at one point through an interaction with my grandmother that she had been actually abused in some form sexually. And I wasn't able to at all talk to her about it because there was just no place going there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just, I really understood that I was also receiving, and my mother had received that energy, and that it was unprocessed basically. And sex had always been this very sort of taboo, or it was a dangerous thing. Someone was going to take advantage of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sort of, why am I receiving this message? Why do I have this sort of idea implanted in myself? And that's when I realized, hey, it's actually coming down my ancestral line too. So I think, there's layers and layers and generations of people that have been accumulating this unspoken issue. And I think it's just coming really massively to the surface now. And people are sort of realizing that our sexual energy is a very sacred energy. So when it's not respected, it has a huge impact on our well-being for our whole life until we take care of it.
Yes. And thank you for bringing up the ancestral. Absolutely. I worked with plant medicine for much of the last few years through some of the deepest part of my healing. And that's what I was shown immediately was my mom was so scared someone was going to hurt me because she'd been hurt. Like this has been going on for generations on both sides of my family. And part of what I came here to do was heal that for myself, for my family, just to be the one that said, no more, this isn't going to happen anymore. And to really go into that healing journey. And it is a continuum. One of the reasons I felt such a strong resonance to you, I loved that we were introduced through Omkari, but then when you presented it as more of a continuum, so there's this range of experiences and how we go from, what do you call it, fragmented to integrated, I believe, right?
Exactly. And that's actually just this recent kind of epiphany that I had, because when I was working through the spectrum, I started off with, okay, well, what's the completely violently disconnected? My big question was, how do you get from violently disconnected all the way up to blissfully connected sex? Because I figured, that's what we want to have as a society. Either we talk about all the negative things around sex, or we all talk about how amazing sex is. And I figure, what's the journey to get there? How do you transform those experiences to in a way, heighten that frequency up to those good things? So the first part, when I realized is, you have someone imposing their willpower onto someone else. Well, of course, that has a very fragmenting experience. It basically, if you're being raped or if you're being touched in a way that's not appropriate, or you haven't, are not in agreement or alignment with that, it's going to disassociate you. So some people even leave their bodies because it's like too painful for them to experience that. And then I tried to work through up the spectrum. Well, what would be all those different, big loaded questions of society that we look at? How does that fit in? So I looked at, okay, well, how about sex work? And is that kind of like someone being disrespected too in their sexuality? And I was reading all kinds of things where you had some people that were coming from very traumatized backgrounds and just going to be reproducing for themselves that trauma in the sex work. And of course, you had all kinds of symptoms of disassociation, of shutting down different parts of your being. But then you could also come into sex work with a very empowered stance and be, wanting to celebrate your sexuality and maybe even help people heal. So that was a very interesting sort of nuance that I was discovering. And then, if you look at substances and people that are under the influence when they're having sex, how connected are they when they're doing that? Does it enhance their experience, or at what point does it disconnect them from themselves and from their partners? And at what point are they actually deferring their own personal power or their personal experience to the substance? Then I looked at things like in porn, that's another very loaded question. If you take it from in a very extreme way, you have porn addiction, and then how that actually, what was coming through in the interviews and the research was that people have a lot of trouble connecting to real people if they've gone to that place of addiction with porn. So I was always interested in looking what's underneath that and digging deeper. What's that need that they're expressing that's not being met and that is being filled up with porn. And then I looked at even the colonial footprint. These are all sort of the taboo things, all the sort of filters of society. Even patriarchy is a filter. And they leave imprints on our sexual experience. So let's say if we take the colonial imprint, and you look at how it organizes the world in terms of like powerful people, less powerful people, the people that are worth something, the people that are not worth something, and then this again gets imprinted on sexual dynamics that show up all around the world. But you have like even more subtle things in terms of sexual vampirism, where people are just not disclosing the real reasons why they want to have sex with you, and they're actually needing an energy hit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of covered up. And that just the sexual vampirism one, we could go into that so deep, because I think there's a lot of unconsciousness around sexuality and why we want sex and why are we wanting that energy. Because oftentimes we're not taking care of the blocks that are blocking us from having access to our own energy. So it's a very interesting place. So yeah, so that's where when all those places come from this unconscious place, And what they really are covering up is a lot of these people are coming from places where they have a lot of pain points because they themselves are carrying all kinds of things that are unprocessed. And so what happens when sex is practiced from that place is that it fragments. It comes from a fragmented place, but it also fragments the people that are involved in it. The beautiful thing was when you get to that place of having that really clear contract with the other person, because at that point, then you're aligned with your willpower. And so it's not fragmenting because you've decided this is what you're going to be doing, and everything's clear. So at that point on, there's different levels of connection that can happen. And so the contract could be, hey, we're just going to have like sex at a physical level. And as we go up the spectrum and realize that, we're engaging more and more parts of our being. So basically the next step up would be, hey, we're bringing in our creativity and our playfulness, and we're bringing in our self-esteem, and we're bringing in our confidence. And as we go up, it's like, hey, we can bring in our heart now. It feels safe. We're going to bring our depth of feeling, and eventually all the way up to like our spiritual essence. And so what I saw is that as you go up the spectrum, the more and more you become connected to yourself. And that allows you to be available to connect fully to the other person. So that makes it possible to be blissfully connected. And the other point that was really interesting was that this is where the integration comes in, is that basically when we're starting to bring in the different parts of our being, we're also engaging and activating our own pain points in those places. So let's say you have wounded self-esteem. Well, if you start practicing sex with someone, those issues, if you bring in that element of yourself, you're sort of putting yourself more on the line and trusting the other person, your self-esteem issues will start coming to the surface. Or if you're feeling wounded in your heart, and to be able to engage more deeper, you have to heal those parts that are, hurting, that are sort of, keeping you from connecting at the heart level. So what I saw was that basically, as the energy activates our pain points, we have to start processing them. And to process them, you have to be aware of them. You have to be conscious of how the different things are showing up. So when you process them and take care of them, of course, it allows you to integrate yourself. It allows you to integrate that part of yourself that was a bit alienated from being hurt, and you allow it back in. So on that integration path, you're becoming more and more whole. But if you get to this place where you're not aware and unconscious of what's coming up, and it sort of goes into a default mode, then you're enacting patterns that are unaware. And what can happen is that your relationship will start stagnating, and you'll go down the spectrum of connection because the pain point that's coming up is not being dealt with. So it blocks the flow.
Well,
so that's the interesting thing of seeing that like that.
Well, and that's what really drew me to your work. I signed up for your program. I'm excited to be doing your program. I've been very, what do I want to say? I guess guarded, cautious about who I work with in this healing journey, because it is so vulnerable. And
absolutely.
And you talk about all the choices and the whole spectrum, and bringing the whole person and all the chakras and this isn't like pound to death the sacral chakra until you beat it into place, or, cry it all out until it's cleansed. This is a whole body experience. There's been a lot more happen here than just around sexuality. And it's interesting to me that you're helping people find a more sacred way to connect and co-create sex. And for many people that I've met, it's like, don't even turn the lights on. We're not even to the point where we can deal with the physical body and the physical body in a room with the lights on and be that vulnerable and that exposed. And yet what we're talking about is coming to a place where we heal together through this act, rather than waiting until we've healed everything to show up for this act. It's a way to show up with each other and heal together. And that's really beautiful to me.
Yeah. And actually I feel that, to some degree, our sexual energy and our sexual sharing is almost designed to make us, is designed to help us heal, because we're basically circulating energy with another person through our body, activating, and it activates all those elements that are sort of dormant inside of ourselves that need to be addressed. and it sort of brings them to the surface. So it is very much of a process in itself of healing. If you bring your consciousness into it, that's why I bring the co-creative aspect of it, is that when you start bringing your consciousness into it, that's when it becomes this endless growth process.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say that one of the big aha moments, as you talked about bringing all the different parts of our being inside, that was one of my big aha moments, is because, sometimes we think that, of course, sexual trauma has a big impact on how we show up sexually. But one of my big aha moments was realizing that everything, actually, all our basic needs, all our needs, emotional, physical, sexual, spiritual needs, if they were met or not met, will impact how you show up sexually. So let's say you grew up in an environment where you were constantly bullied around or pushed around, and you feel like you're walking in eggshells all the time. Well, just imagine how much stress you hold in your body, and how your root chakra is going to be definitely holding a lot of memories around fear. So I can just imagine someone who has a lot of fear around body stuff. So safety and security are at the base of that. So if someone doesn't want to, you mentioned like someone doesn't want to show their body in front of another person. These are basic things of how you feel safe. Are you safe to show up? So that's where I like starting in my programs to help people, is at the first level of safety, because that's the basic. If you don't feel safe to be there, be safe to be seen, be safe to be, to show your emotions, to be received. All those things will impact then on how you can actually enjoy sex, right?
But isn't that more about ourselves? I mean, it's so ironic because as you're saying this, I'm going, the person that I haven't felt safe, it's about me feeling safe with me. It's about me feeling comfortable with me, with who I am. A lot of the time, it's not even about involving the other person if I haven't learned how to do that for myself, right?
Exactly. Because we always will manifest in our lives what we are carrying. So if we don't feel safe in ourselves, we're going to manifest someone that doesn't make us feel safe. Mm-hmm. Because basically, if we were fully aware of the need for us to be safe, we would not accept that person in our lives, right?
Right.
So the more you integrate that feeling of safety for yourself, the more you integrate your self-esteem for yourself, the more you integrate your feelings for yourself, the more you are going to show up fully for yourself and know what you want to accept and not accept into your field. And it also allows you to bring in something that's going to meet you at those levels. So yeah, it's beautiful when you can, take care. I always say that we're the trailblazers for ourselves. We have to sort of create the conditions for ourselves so that we can then receive it from others.
Yes. Yes. And it did feel good to look at some of the stuff that you send and recognize how far I have come already, because I think for some of us, maybe someone else listening who is coming from a place similar to mine, it can feel like a long journey. Like, wow, am I ever going to get to a place where I can actually enjoy a healthy co-creative sexual experience? And we can get so focused on the prize that we lose track of how far we've come. And so what I love about your continuum is it not only shows me where I am, but it shows me where I've been and how far I've come. And it shows me kind of some next steps of what I can look forward to next as I step forward.
Mm-hmm. And the very interesting thing is that it's a process. So we're not always aware of the parts of ourselves that are not integrated. Because sometimes we think, hey, like I have a great self-esteem. And then suddenly there's a situation that comes and like, bam, like, oh my God, why am I feeling so bad about myself? Or, so it's it's very much of a process. You engage in it and then things get revealed as you go forth. So it's a beautiful thing to engage in.
Yeah. I love it. Well, and so I've actually had people tell me, Cheryl, you're really brave to do this. I don't think I want to take on what you're taking on. It's really brave. And I want to look at them and go, well, yes and no. I mean, I think it takes more courage to stay in a place where I'm fearful all the time and angry all the time. To me, I don't know if I see it as a brave journey as much as a hopeful journey. I'm just moving towards something that's more hopeful and more promising. What would you say to someone who thinks this is a journey of courage? How do you see it?
Well, I think healing in itself is a journey of courage, but also of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually when like our souls are always in expansion and our spirits are in expansion. And if we've chosen this path where we want to get to a certain place in our lives, and our wounding is holding us back, we just feel this itch of like, hey, I want to get to that place. Like I know I'm not fulfilling my full potential yet.
Yeah.
And it sort of gets to this point. It's almost like your life becomes so frustrating that you have to do something about it. And it depends, of course, of your personality type. If you want to just endure, that's fine. But sometimes it's like, hey, I have to do something about this. I really want to experience. I know what I can experience. Like there's this kind of innate intuition of what's possible.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's it exactly. I love the way you language that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about your book. I'm excited to read it when it comes out. Tell me a little more about what we can look forward to in there.
Well, it was really interesting process because it started off, like I say, as a blog, and I was working through all the spectrum, or the continuum, however you'd like to formulate it. But as I started realizing there's a lot of substance here, and I started working as well with people in the Akashic Records, and well, first of all, I did a lot of my own healing work in the Akashic Records, and just had so many amazing results going through that and finding where the knots were and letting go of them. And it was so efficient and so speedy that I was like, hey, this is amazing. And so the woman that I was actually working with at one point, she's like, Julie, don't you want to learn how to do this? And I was like, sure. And I thought I was actually just doing it because I was interviewing many different people on their sexual biographies. And I was able to create these containers for them where they would often tell me, I have never spoken to anyone about this before. Or I would say something and it would allow them to just release some tears, or just something that would be actually, the interviews became a form of healing process for people. Or they would tell me, I love talking to you because you really let me see things in a completely different way. Or they'd say, after your sessions, I usually need a 2-hour break because I really have to process what came up. So I was like, hey, well, maybe this whole Akashic Record training process is for me to sort of, during my interviews, hold a really great space for the people. And then the woman I was working with at one point said to me, okay, Julie, you're ready to offer this to the public. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was really this feeling of me. I came from a family that's extremely pragmatic and very scientific, and everything has a scientific hormonal reason and everything's written in the DNA and everything like that. So for me to engage in something that has a spiritual component, it was almost like coming out of the closet. And I remember the first time I put that I was offering my services on the internet, I felt like I was going to die, literally. But, so what happened was as I started working with people in my practice, I started realizing, hey, these people are having great results too. And so I was like, hey, this works really well at this part of the spectrum, or this works really well to illustrate this part of the spectrum. So I started adding in different experiences from healing sessions that I'd had, or just examples from my interviews that I'd undergone with them. So it sort of became more and more full, this book, and sort of it. So what it is basically, it goes from violently disconnected. I have examples of people that healed that part of themselves, and it goes through the spectrum of people who experienced sexual vampirism and how they came awake to that process and realized what it was doing to them, and even people that worked through some porn addiction, people that they think they just want to have physical sex, and then they realize, hey, I actually want a little bit more, and they have to work through those issues. So it's a full spectrum of people, of different anecdotes and stories of people working through these things. So so that's how it's sort of slowly emerging into this, or slowly emerge into this bigger offering.
Yeah, and I think it's really healing when we can see ourselves in someone else. Like reading that story of someone else and their journey is very healing for us. That's why I blog my stuff as I'm healing. Some people are like, why do you want to put that out there? Well, I'm not putting it out there to put my pain story out there. I'm putting it out there to put how I'm moving through my pain story into something that's powerful and wonderful. And that's why I really believe we can heal through our stories that we share with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like we give each other permission that, hey, this is actually something that I recognize in myself.
Exactly.
So for instance, I was talking to this woman the other day we were talking about our energetic boundaries and how it's so easy to take on everyone else's, when you're a very highly sensitive person, you can easily take on other people's stuff. And then I just started telling her a little bit about that. And she was like, wow, yeah, that. And I was telling her a little bit about the work I was doing. And I realized like it's sometimes people don't realize that they're struggling with something. And then when you talk about it, like for instance, this just one concept like this of like healing your intuition, because oftentimes we don't trust ourselves. And that's why we get ourselves into situations that are not good for ourselves. And then we hurt ourselves. But if we have a really strong intuition, we don't put ourselves in those situations. But the interesting thing is that sometimes we have wounded intuitions because, people maybe made fun of you or made you feel like whatever you were experiencing wasn't valid. So sometimes naming something, giving a story about something, people are like, hey, that's me. And then suddenly it gives them permission to say that is something that I need healing for, or it allows them to just right away take that step forward and like step into their power a little bit more.
I love that expression. I've never heard wounded intuition before, but it's absolutely true. It's where we stopped trusting our intuition, right? And
exactly.
I think we've all known since we were little that there was this gut feeling or this voice inside, and somehow logic didn't support that, so we shut it down, or people would look at us and go, well, why don't you like that person? Oh, never mind, I don't have a good reason. And we just stopped trusting ourselves.
Yeah, or it could be things like, you're experiencing some form of violence in some way or form, but no one else seems to see it.
Yeah.
It's like everyone under everyone else's radar. So you start thinking, hey, this is normal. This is something that I have to just endure.
Exactly. Well, and that kind of is a great lead in to bring up what we're working on together, because I'm so excited about it. I think we've had that in sex, money, politics, and religion. There's been these places of wounding where things didn't feel quite normal, but society accepted it. I guess it's normal. And we started to shut down our voice. And I think it's fabulous that we 4 women are going to come together and help women reclaim our voices in these areas where we've shut down.
Absolutely.
That's going to be so fun. Well, we're looking at rolling that out in the springtime, and we're already having these really fun collaborative conversations. And I just wanted to put a plug in there for it because I'm going to start talking about it more as we move forward and let people know to watch for that. And that's another great reason to go on my website and sign up for our email at journeyofpossibilities.com, because then you'll know when we roll that program out. And we really just want to help women find their voices in all kinds of ways. And you do this work with individuals and groups as far as our sexuality, Julie?
Exactly. So I work with individuals, and the interesting thing is they can come around relationship issues, but it's not limited to that. But it's interesting how these issues are always very revealing. Usually you can experience frustrations in your relationships and your sexual connection, and it's just revealing of so many different other dynamics. So it's a good place to start. Yeah. And then my programs, I'm at my 3rd edition now of my Art of Co-Creative Sex. And we're basically going through, I basically guide, there's a component where I explain what co-creative sex is and how energy moves, how we basically can become aware of the process and the impact on us and use it as a tool and start understanding what's lurking in our blind spots and in our shadows, so we can start becoming very present to what's there and be able to be an active participant in our process. and then there's over 5 sessions I do the live healing sessions with the group. So we'll go through issues around security, which I have a theme for each chakra. So we're going through issues of security, healing messages we got around sexuality and our creativity, around our power, reclaiming our power. And then, the heart, all the places that we've shielded our heart, and then the throat, where we've learned not to speak our truth and where we got disaligned in our capacity to be authentic with ourselves. So I go through that as a program. And then I always do one individual Akashic record reading for everyone, because I feel that helps them to really get to the deeper places and understand how healing it is to just find the root and release it. It can be as simple as that. But I want them to have that experience so that when we're doing the group program, they start realizing how amazingly powerful moving energy is.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing this. I'm nervous. Just to be 100% authentic here, I'm nervous and I'm excited at the same time. And I was talking to Mario about doing this and all my feelings around that. And I'm really grateful for the Akashic record reading, because even though I'm a big proponent of getting our own answers, when it comes to something this intimate, and especially if this is a big part of our healing journey in this lifetime or several lifetimes, I think it's easy to have blind spots. And so it's really nice to have someone that we trust, that we can sit with and open up to, who can kind of reflect into the shadows. And that's really where the plant medicine has also helped me. It's like a big internal mirror. It goes in and shows me what's lurking in the shadows that I'm not really seeing truthfully, because it's amazing the stories that we can tell ourselves and the things that we can make up around why we are the way we are, right? Versus what it really is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's very healing to have that very strong sacred container around us, and to have someone that can just pierce right through that blind spot and ooh, yeah, that's there. Okay. And when you find it, it's just at the end of a session, I'll ask people, how are you feeling? And it's like, oh my God, I feel like I took off 20 tons of bricks off my shoulder. They just feel so relieved. And sometimes it's a very peaceful, very serene feeling. Everyone's a bit different depending on what we're working on. But it's always it always helps move the energy out, and that's what we want, is to sort of clear up whatever doesn't need to be there anymore.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and it's interesting to talk about the shadow work, because there is a kind of a fear, especially when we first start doing healing work around something, to look in the shadows and what might be lurking there. And the interesting thing about that is it's already running the show. So it's better to see what's in the shadows that's sabotaging what we really want than it is to leave it in the shadows and not know it's there. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really interesting because the shadow can show up in such funny ways. I'm just thinking of a relationship that was sort of a toxic relationship, and the person was always sort of controlling the situation and controlling when we could speak and when we couldn't speak, and pushing me away and pulling me back. And it put me in this place of feeling very needy in a way. And I was realizing that actually neediness is one of my shadows, because it's that place where I need to feel loved. And I was, it's so easy to see other people's shadow, he's taking advantage of me and doing this. And then it was like, hey, my shadow is being needy. And if I don't take care of this neediness, I will return to people that are playing with me, because I'm looking for that love outside of myself. So when you start realizing, hey, that's my shadow, and I have to process where those pain points come from, those feelings of abandonment that I've experienced, working whatever hurt me, so that, hey, I'm going to be a solid container. And when I meet someone that I want to be with, I'm going to be in my power in that moment. I won't be out of that place of neediness. So I find the shadow such a fascinating thing to study, because it's sometimes things that we don't even associate to being a shadow. Yeah, really. Really.
Yeah.
Well, and you bring up a good point about relationships in general. We think that we need to look for this right person that's going to meet all this criteria, instead of realizing that whatever is showing up in our life right now is showing us what we want to heal and where we're at in our journey. And it's not about finding some right person, because everybody's just reflecting to us where we're at. So it's really a special place to recognize that and embrace that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
agree.
I think this has been a fabulous chat. I like to ask if you have any upcoming dates, events you'd like to share with listeners.
Yes, well, there's still a few places left, maybe 3 places left in my Art of Co-Creative Sex healing journey. So it starts on the 25th of February, and it's on a Sunday. So if you're interested in participating, just get onto my website called cocreativesex.com and send me a little message, and we'll get the process going for you.
Yes, absolutely. Come do this program with me and we'll kind of celebrate our sisterhood together and we'll heal together. That would be very special. I appreciate you creating that, Julie.
Well, and I thank you so much for giving me a space to be able to talk about it and be heard. It's such a wonderful experience to be heard in the world, right?
Yes, it is, especially someone doing such great work.
Especially when you know you have something important to share. You know?
Exactly. And you do it with such joy, and that's very inviting. So thank you for holding that joyful space for us. I like to wrap up my shows by asking my guest if you have another parting thought that you'd like to leave us with today.
Good question. I just have the words, always come back to yourself. That's what's coming through.
Yeah. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think like you said it so well just previously that, you know, whatever in your life is happening to you, whatever situation is going on, it's always coming back to yourself is the most healing and the most effective place to go forward from.
That's wonderful. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for all that you are doing to help us wake up to our sexual energy and power and joy again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Would you like to be a guest on Exploring Possibilities? Drop me a note at info@journeyofpossibilities.com. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Exploring Possibilities.